The Internet started out as a request from the United States military. How can a message be relayed across long distances, even if a relay post or node is knocked out? This started out as ARPANET, as a few computers were linked for the Defense Department. As the Internet Protocol, or IP, grew from a small side project, it was offered out for free for others to use. The World Wide Web was developed as a platform to operate on the Internet for hosting information to others. This fledgling web had few rules. The World Wide Web was created by Tim Berners-Lee to run the Internet. As the World Wide Web was introduced, it became apparent that finding another computer by its web and/or phone number was cumbersome. A solution was found in the Domain Name Registry Service, which is incidentally housed physically within the United States borders. When you enter a web address into a browser of your computer sends that address or URL to the Domain Name Registry Service, which looks at the address and finds the numerical address of the information. This numerical address, called the IP address, is sent back to your computer, and your computer then calls the IP number to fetch information to display on your screen. You never see this, so we think the actual web address of Wikipedia is www.wikipedia.org, not http://208.80.152.2. As it was developed in the United States, a country that prides itself on the notion of free speech, the Internet was left to flourish fairly unsupervised at the start. China, on the other hand, has different ideas. China takes information distribution very seriously. There are several topics that the government does not wish to have discussed or even read about. For instance, information surrounding the Tibetan liberation or the Tiananmen Square massacre of 1989 are deemed too sensitive and are prohibited in China. The government there requires search engines such as Google or Yahoo to not display particular results when queried. Many have criticized Google for going against its "Don't Be Evil" mission statement for complying with such laws. Regardless, IP addresses displaying questionable content are shut down and web surfers are simply denied access. China has even gone and created cartoon characters of policemen to remind web surfers that the police are there with you, surfing, in an attempt to add a degree of auto-censorship. China's want to censor the web could be claimed from a security front. Other nations have found new ways to rally people into accepting censorship. Let me preface this section with a little clarification. Child porn is a serious issue, and I do not want to be thought of as in any way supporting such a horrendous thing. The child is harmed in the very making of child porn, and the possessing of such images is considered criminal because the possessor, by consuming that media, is financially incentivizing the creation of it. This is why many nations consider possessing child porn a grievous offense. In the UK, Internet Service Providers, ISPs, have begun blocking websites with content deemed offensive. The sites are from a list maintained by the Internet Watch Foundation, found at iwf.org.uk. The Internet Watch Foundation flagged a Wikipedia page about the 1980s rock band The Scorpions for containing offensive images. In the UK, the offending IP numbers were given to the Internet Service Providers. Most providers displayed a 404 page not found error when users tried to access the page. A couple of providers displayed slightly more informative notices stating the page has been blocked by IWF. Important to note that the IWF, although acting under government approval, is not a government entity, but a private one. This means that there is no political review process. Critics tend to point out that in other areas of society, we have judicial review when other rights are infringed on. The IWF has no such system. If the ISPs who opted to announce that the site was being removed for reasons had instead followed suit and also just returned a generic 404 notice to web surfers, it is unlikely that many would have known the censorship had occurred. The entire page had been removed because an image of one of the band's album covers displayed a 10-year-old girl naked with her genitals obscured by cracked glass. Accepting that the image was offensive, it seems poorly decided to block the entire page of information. Many liberal democracies have justified censorship at various times and varying levels. The UK is no stranger to censorship. In 1960, the novel Lady Chatterley's Lover was banned in the UK, but after it had gone to court, it was found to in fact have literary merit and was allowed to be purchased. The difference is that the banning of the book was a political act done publicly, and the parties involved were informed. They also had access to legal recourse to correct the mistake. This wiki page was not given this kind of courtesy. A private firm had ISPs block the website with no information offered to many of the interested parties, leaving judicial review completely absent. If you want to accept censorship in a liberal democracy, openness of what and why it has occurred ought to be required, as well as a system of redress of grievances. This returns us to the United States. While China's take on censorship seems to follow from an understanding that information is power, the United States has come to it by way of information is product. Capitalism operates in a political system where the government agrees to protect individual property rights. If information is media, and the media is owned, then it could seem that capitalist governments are obliged to restrict individuals from unscrupulously sharing with third parties. To this end, many capitalist liberal democracies have entered into an international treaty known as ACTA. The Anti-Counterfeiting Trade Agreement is an agreement between nations to protect copyright ownership across borders at similar legal levels. A big portion of this is to combat online file sharing. The domain naming service is housed in the USA, so removing unwanted websites may only require deleting them from the DNS servers, thus removing them from all the web. But the World Wide Web is only one system running on the Internet. Others, such as Voice over IP or VoIP, and IRC chat, and other file transfer protocols like some P2P programs, run alongside the web on the Internet. ACTA signatories have agreed to hold Internet service providers responsible for illegal file transfers. To protect themselves, the ISPs must know what's being communicated to connected computers. This is done by what is called deep packet sniffing. The ISPs check the packets of information to see what the content is, deciphers it, and decides if it's bothersome or not. This is akin to a system monitoring every phone call. In a degree of censorship that is not commonly accepted in the USA, ACTA leaves each signing country open to develop their own laws on how to reach the goals of the treaty. Therefore, it is still too early yet to speculate on what safeguards of liberty and privacy are placed in the laws created to comply with ACTA. Individual countries have had various reasons to want to limit the openness of communication on the Internet, and will continue to do so. In the UK, where surveillance is common, it is unlikely that there will be much difficulty in extending that surveillance to the web. The United States, with its open criticism of China's censorship, is, ironically, one of the big players pushing China to also sign on to ACTA. After all the hype, though, the Internet is just another form of media. As such, it is just as susceptible to the abuses of other forms of mass communication. The Internet has started as an intricate means to connect people. It has crossed borders and cultures with seemingly little effort. It is not all that surprising that international treaties is what is required to bring it under control of law. Perhaps what is surprising is that property rights is the reason to create law in a virtual world with no real property to speak of.